Hello everyone, Sandrak here. So in today's video I want to talk to you about the strength level of Baal and why she, in my mind, is a must-pull character for the next few patches. Now of course, regarding the must-pull, I'm coming from a gaming experience point of view, so if you're someone who really doesn't like her, or you originally are not planning on getting her because you don't like her for some reason, then yeah, it is up to you to not pull for her. But I'm just saying from a game development standpoint of view, and for like a storing up potential useful character point of view, she is a must pull. So of course, with that said, let's get started. Now of course, like my normal videos, conclusions first. So the biggest complaints I've heard about Baal is her damage multipliers. Her damage multipliers are not impressive, that is correct. But the rest of the video is basically all explain the fact why her damage multipliers cannot go higher. Because the main reason for Baal is that she is currently serving as a battery for teammates. On top of that, she is serving as a sub DPS off-field specialization, so basically similar to Xingqiu's Q for her E. And during her Q stage, she can serve as a burst main DPS. This is already good enough as a character who can already fill 3 roles. On top of that, her base attack at level 90 is 337, which is top 4 even comparing between 5 stars. For reference, the top 3 right now is Xiao, Ayaka, and Eula, and right after that it's Baal. And given the fact that she is technically a sub DPS, this is already insane. And on top of that, Baal converts energy recharge into electro damage bonus, which already gives her a huge room to build more on attack. And even further, she even gains attack in her Q state. So with all of these damage bonus, attacks, buffs, everything added together, her damage multipliers basically cannot go any higher. If anything happens right now, again, I'll calculate this at the end of the video, but right now, even under the current stats in her Q stage, she's already looking at 3k to 4k attack very easily, as long as you stack on energy recharge. So even looking at that with a higher damage multiplier, she is going to literally break the game and become Gangyu 2.0. So this is why I believe that her damage multipliers cannot go higher, but because of all of these added together, her ability to play as a main DPS for 7 seconds in her Q state, she is able to basically provide energy for the entire team and also doing damage off field when she is in after casting her E. This 3 added together allows her to basically fit into multiple teams other than, of course, Ayaka's permafreeze comp. Every other team can make use of her. Finally, the most important part, she enables a completely different way of building character. Previously, when building character, we sort of only build a character based on the character. So for example, for Shanley, you want to take care of her energy recharge, you take care of her attack, you take care of her elemental mastery. Everything needs to be built within the character. If anyone else provides team buffs, like for example, Hu Tao can provide crit buff, Rosaria can provide crit buffs, crit rate buffs, things like that. With that, it's just bonus on top. However, with Baal, because she can provide energy particles so consistently, for characters like Shanlin, Beidou, and Xingqiu, they can now be built without the need to build any energy recharge at all. Because currently for like a level 90 Shanlin, we're mostly of the time, unless you have insane builds, we're looking at about 1.5k attack to max out, because you need to focus on energy recharge. You also need a bit on elemental mastery. Whereas right now, if we have Raiden Shogun on the team, for a Shanlin, you can instead completely focus on elemental mastery and attack, and a Shanlin going up to 2k attack is going to be insane. The same case goes for Xingqiu. Instead of wearing sacrificial sword, Xingqiu can swap to a DPS sword, for example the Jade Cutter, or not even the Jade Cutter, or even a very cheap 4-star DPS sword like the Flute, or anything that increases attack percent. Their damage is also going to be insane, and this is the type of team that only Baal and the Electro Traveler is going to support. But on top of that, it's better for Baal to support this type of team because Baal herself is also this type of character, and she's going to be able to do damage this way. Whereas for Electro Traveler, if you do this sort of team, you're essentially wasting 1 spot to fully serve as battery for this 3. But this is why, essentially, in my mind, the Raiden Shogun is a must-pull. Now let's move into the details. For the rest of the video, it's going to be a little bit long, so I'm going to split them into sections, so you can only look at the sections you want to look at. The first one is her basic stats. So again, I only talk about attack here because that's the only one useful. At level 90, she is looking at 337 attack, which again, I've said before, is top 4 among all main DPSs even today. The top 3 in order is, the top 5 in order is Xiao is greater than Ayaka. Ayaka and Eula have the same base attack. Raiden is the fourth one, and Raiden is even higher than Gangyu. Gangyu is ranking 5th at the moment. Plus, again, her Q further increases her attack percent. This explains why her rates cannot go higher. Basically to keep her under control. She ascends with energy recharge. She was ascending with electro damage bonus, but they changed that. Energy recharge is basically a better stat because for her passive 2, she can convert energy recharge into electro damage bonus passively. For example, with 275% energy recharge, which is rather easy to do, especially if you put the 4-piece emblem of Severed Fate on him. On her, she can easily stack up to 275%. And with that, she's already looking at 70% electro damage bonus, which is already 9% more than a goblin. And just saying, she's getting all of this for free. So she's getting the advantage of both 275% energy recharge and 70% electro damage bonus, both for free because of her passive. So this is why even at C0, Raiden is 100% having the capability to play as a burst DPS in her Q state. Like Eula and Gangyu, she is basically a monster when it comes to stats, but unlike Eula and Gangyu, their monstrosity is shown in the fact that they have crazy high damage multipliers. But in Raiden's case, because she is receiving so much buff here and there, stuff like that, as I've explained later in the video, they focused on buffing her base attack and the fact that the amount of stacks she is getting from buffs. So this basically also allows her to become a monstrosity when it comes to stats. But overall, she doesn't look very impressive on paper because the damage multipliers are not high. But again, as I've said probably 2 times at this point, her damage multipliers cannot go any higher. If it goes any higher, she's going to probably surpass Gangyu in terms of craziness. Moving on to the second part, which I want to explain really quickly before I move on to her E and her Q. What Raiden can do for the teammates. Now, of course, I've said before, Raiden only deals damage for 7 seconds in her Q state, otherwise her damage is not the most impressive. So what can she do when she's not doing the 7 seconds of damage? What can she do? In short answer, she can support her teammates in 3 main ways. The first one is, of course, battery. She can recharge energy crazy. I'll do the exact calculations later when talking about E and Q, but she is basically a universal battery like Electro MC, where she is only one you need. As soon as she is on the team, the other 3 characters can all push up to 80 ultimate cost and still have enough energy left over to roll around. And the second one she can do is she can do off-field electro damage. The damage is not impressive, as I've said before, but it's the electro application, and on top of that, because Raiden is so universal, it's basically can be used on any character other than, of course, Ayaka for her perma-freeze comp. Other than that, Eula can use her for overload, Eula can use her for superconduct, Yoimiya can use her for overload, Chao can use her for electro charge, even Xiao can use her for swirl, and of course, if you're building Ningguang as a Geo DPS, then she can also use her for crystallize, I guess. But overall, the point is that she is able to be used in most teams, and she can provide off-field damage very consistently. The third one is actually she can buff the ultimate damage of her teammates depending on their ultimate cost. I'll again have the calculations later, but it is basically equivalent to 3/4 of a free Noblesse Oblige basically equipped on her, 2-piece Noblesse. Yes, 2-piece Noblesse Oblige equipped on her for free, and this again is a huge boost on top. Now moving on to her E and her Q, I'll go over how it works very fast so you guys can understand what I'm talking about for like the next bit, and afterwards I'll be commenting their strength level, their weakness, and things like that. So for her E, it is basically very similar to Albedo's E. You basically, instead of summoning an elevator, you summoning an eye, and the eye will do a few things when after Baal leaves the field. Or Baal can stay on the field, but it makes more sense for her to leave. The first thing is that the eye will coordinate attack with whoever is on the field. This includes co-op. In co-op, if there are 4 characters on the field, the eye will coordinate attack with all 4 characters. However, the eye can only be triggered once every 0.9 seconds, and when it attacks, it deals AoE electro damage bonus. On top, when you're in co-op, if you are not the one triggering the eye, say the eye is on you, but someone else triggers the eye, the eye only then deals 20% of the original damage, which is why when playing co-op, Baal is not very favored for her damage, but still constant electro application is good. On top of that, as long as the eye is on the field, when anyone casts their Q, they will receive a buff based on the amount of energy particles they consume during their Q. Again, the damage numbers we're looking at 12% for 40 energy particles to around 24% for 80 energy particles, which is what I'm saying in the beginning. Taking the average of around 18%, we're looking at more than 3/4 of a free 2-piece Noblesse Oblige on her for free, as long as you cast it during the duration of the Q. And of course, after you cast your Q, you can still, as long as the eye is still on the field, you can still use it. Moving on to her Q. Her Q is very similar to Child's E, but again, she does initial damage on top, where Child doesn't really do that. So she does, again, initial damage. The damage is Electro AoE damage, and afterwards she enters 7 seconds of what I like to call the Q state. Well, under this state, she has like 5 or 6 stuff, so let's talk about one by one. First one, her weapon switches from Polearm to Katana. I believe she actually uses the Mist Splitter. We'll have to look at that in more detail, but from what I saw, it looks like the Mist Splitter. On top, during this time, she cannot be affected by electro charge reaction. Basically means she cannot be hydro affected and electrocuted, which is very nice because electro charge actually stops you from attacking for a bit. So this means she can get her full seconds of DPS window out. The third one is that her resistance to interruption is increased. This is basically good. Free Zhongli Shield interruption resistance added on. The fourth one is when her attack hits enemy, recharges energy to all nearby party members. This is only the on-field characters. This does not include the off-field ones. Can trigger a max of 5 times. 5 times in 7 seconds, not bad. Once every 1 second. So basically for 5 seconds you can trigger this. I have done the math before. The energy particle recharge for this state looks like around 20 to 40 energy particles. Again, assuming 275% energy recharge. And finally, during this state, all her attacks, basically her normal, her charge, and her plunge attacks, are considered elemental burst damage. So which means this is why she can very nicely abuse the 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate on her, because that one further buffs damage of her Q, which in this case, since all 7 seconds of her Q is counted as her Q, then this is essentially another 75% damage buff if you're looking at around 275% energy recharge. And finally, on top of that, she will receive a damage bonus based on the amount of Shogun, Byakugan, no Rin stacks on her. Now, I'll shorten this to basically stacks. If you hear me talking about stacks for the rest of the video, it's about this. So for this type of stacks, the stacks can be obtained in 2 ways. The first one, when anyone casts the Q, Baal will receive the stacks, a certain number of stacks based on their energy cost. Again, this is why you want to bring her with 3 other characters who have 80 energy cost as much as possible, because not only does she gain more stacks from them, she also gives them more damage bonus, and in return they give her more damage bonus. Sort of, it's like a positive reinforcement loop and just keeps going upwards. The second one is that when, this is, I believe, during one of her passives, so when nearby party members gain energy particles, not including her, she will be able to gain stacks, 2 stacks every 3 seconds. And for the previous one, I forgot exactly how many, but it's based off the energy cost, as I've said before. So this is her E and Q, and now let's talk about the strengths and weakness. So let's start with her E. So she is probably overall the most complicated character between her E and her Q, because like for characters like Albedo, the E is hugely complex like this, but the Q is just damage. As for her E and Q are both very complex. So for Raiden, both her E and her Q is crucial to her for her success. Her E is again very similar to Albedo's. However, the main advantage of her E over Albedo is this because Albedo stacks off defense for his E and attack for his Q. He doesn't start stacking attack for his Q, for defense for his Q until after a specific constellation. Raiden, on the other hand, stacks off attack off both by default, much easier to build, and on top of that, both deals electro damage bonus, so which is very nice. Moving on to her E. Her E, like Zhongli's shields, can serve many purposes, which includes 3 in total. The first one is off-field damage. 75.6% once every 0.9 seconds at level 10, we're basically looking at 2,300 and 2,310 and 0.95% for at level 10 for the entire duration. Now this is some pretty nice damage. And on top of that, because this is off-field damage, it's considered bonus damage on top, because at this point, whoever is your main DPS is still dishing out damage on the field. The second one is that it can buff teammates' Q damage based off their energy cost. Again, 20%, 12% for 40 energy cost to 24% for 80 energy cost. Basically, again, as I've said by the third time, 3/4 of a Noblesse 2-piece for free. The third one is that it helps with energy recharge for the entire team. Unlike her Q, which only recharges one character, this one recharges for everybody. And again, we're looking at 30 to 40 energy particles for electro characters and 20 to 35 particles for non-electro characters each. So this is a huge for their energy particle recharge. This can basically cover up this can basically cover up a quarter to half of someone's Q, as assuming they're at 80 energy cost for their Q. This already covers almost quarter to half of it, so this is pretty good. And finally, this is not really a thing, but because of her E, she can do this. She is very universal. Basically, anyone other than, of course, Ningguang, who does Crystallize and is the only Geo main DPS at the moment, and Ayaka's Permafreeze team, because you do not want people to be Electro affected, you want them Cryo and Hydro affected. So other than these two, she can basically work with any team. As I said before, Eula can use her for Super Conduct, Yoimiya can use her for Overload, Chao can use her for Electro Charge, even Xiao can use her, Kazuha can use her as well for more damage. Now moving on to her Q. There's quite a bit to talk about for her Q, because as I've explained before, there's like 5 different stuff she's getting while in her Q state. So for her Q, the first important thing is that it allows her to turn into a main DPS, but only for 7 seconds. Now this raises 2 questions. First, what can teammates benefit from her during these 7 seconds of Q DPS window? The second one is that is there enough damage for her to actually DPS during the 7 seconds of Q window? And luckily the answer is both yes and yes. So let's talk about teammates benefits first. At C0 already, which is again completely free to play version, she is already recharging more than enough energy particles for active on-field members. For example, at C0 with again 275% energy recharge, we can easily look at 40 to 50 raw energy particles you can get, which is pretty good. Now let's move on to her damage. Again, damage multipliers are not the best to look at, but because of the 3 to 4 stacks of bonus she is getting on top, the damage will turn out more than nice. The first one is because of her high base attack. If you haven't known already, attack percent is only based off base attack and the attack of her weapon. So again, given a high base attack, this is why given a high base attack is so crucial to attack percent. And because of the fact that she scales off attack percent because of the stacks she's getting earlier. So with this, overall she's getting huge damage boost. The second one is from her electro damage bonus from her energy recharge. This one is the passive one, she's not getting any bonus here. The third one is, of course, I've said before, her stacks. That gives her additional attack percent damage bonus on top of the already damage she is doing out. So let's talk about exactly how many stacks she can get. Now, of course, everyone wants to get to 60 stacks, and unlike Eula, who can only practically get up to 13 stacks for her entire Q duration, Baal can easily comfortably get between 44 to 56 stacks for C0. Assuming as long as you don't bring 3 other characters with 40 energy cost for their ultimate. I don't know why you would do that. But assuming you don't do that, assuming all the characters have at least 60 energy cost, we're looking at 36 stacks to 48 stacks from the stack increase by their Q. On top of that, because Baal can gain stacks passively from her passive by attacking by nearby party members picking up particles, so with this she can gain like around another 8 stacks very comfortably. So overall we're looking at 44 to 56 stacks in total for her Q. Whenever she casts her Q, that's almost 4 stacks. Now, of course, if you have C1 on top, that's more stacks you're getting. You're pretty much guaranteed 60 stacks at almost all times when you cast her Q. Now let's talk about the 1,000 different ways her damage bonus can increase for her Q. So at level 10 from the stacks alone, a single stack can add 7% to the initial hit and 1.31% for the rest of the 7 seconds. So overall that is 392% attack percent bonus for the initial hit, and on top of that 73.36 attack percent increase for the rest 7 seconds. Even if we ignore the 392% attack percent damage bonus for the initial hit, which can convert easily to bring her from 700 to 1000% in terms of damage, and on top of that basically the 73.36% attack percent damage bonus is 1.5 attack percent sands or attack percent goblet or attack percent circlet for free. So we're basically looking at a Baal when casting her Q can easily go up to 3 or to 4k attack. On top of that she has over 200% energy recharge, and on top of that she can have decent crit ratio. This is very insane because mostly for most even burst field DPS, Hu Tao going up to 3 attack is already insane, and normally for characters like Xiao and more old school ones we're generally looking at 2k to 2.5k is already very good. Like my Kachin has 2.5k attack, and that is already pretty much near the top of Kachin's build in terms of free to playness. So with easily 3 to 4k attack, Baal is going to be a monster when it comes to damage. And finally, her artifacts that can buff this. The artifact 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate is going to be her only choice, because under her Q state, again this one is not stated in English, but if you look at the Chinese one, you go by translation, you can find this one on, I believe, the second last line. So it states that any auto, charged, or plunge attack is considered Q damage, which again, on top of the 75% energy recharge 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate, can buff her damage by another 70% bonus on top. So overall this is very nice damage looking for her. So in conclusion, for her Q state, under C0, even under C0 for her Q stage, her damage can easily be tier 0, but only limits to the 7 seconds of her Q state. Any other time, her main job will be electro application, team buff, and battery. However, the damage will be decent. It will be a nice bonus cherry on top. Finally, for Baal's conclusion, before I move on to her constellations and her talents, for Baal is going to be a sub DPS who serves the role of burst DPS, battery, and off-field sub DPS all in one. On top of that, in normal situations, she normally focuses on battery and off-field DPS, sub DPS, while buffing teammates Q damage. But while in her Q stage, she can serve as a main DPS with insane damage, meanwhile getting particles for her teammates. So finally, moving on to her constellations. Having talked about her for C0 as so many times, now you can easily understand that she doesn't really need constellations. This is probably the nicest thing MiHoYo has ever done this anniversary, other than, you know, giving us only 10 intertwined fates, is that they swapped Baal's C4 to her C2 and her C2 to her C4. So this means now for Baal you only need to get to C2 to basically have the most broken Baal you ever want. C6 is a nice bonus on top, but C6 is more meant for memes where you want to create unlimited Shanling Pyronados or unlimited Shinchu Qs. But other than that, C2 is more than enough for any low budget spenders, and C0 is completely enough for any free to play players. So with that said, let's quickly go over her constellations. C1, I've mentioned this before, gives you more stacks, allows you to easily stack up to 60 stack when casting her Q. C2 gives you more damage when under her Q state, basically ignores 60% of enemy defense, which is very nice. I believe there is only one other character that ignores enemy defense somewhere, I forgot who exactly. C4 increases nearby party member attack by 30% lasting 10 seconds. This is more of a sub DPS or support constellation. It's nice to see that they swap these two because C2 is definitely more useful when it comes to damage. And C6, while she is attacking in her Q state every 1 second, she can decrease the cooldown of the elemental burst of her entire team by 1 second, excluding her, of course. Max 5 stacks, so similar to the max 5 stacks earlier, we're looking at a 5-second decrease on the CD of her teammates, their Q, basically pretty much every single time. And that is all for her constellations. Now let's very quickly go over her talents and passives. For talents, I just want to tell you what you need to farm in order to get her, and for passive, we sort of already talked about. For talents, she needs a series of light, so they come on Wednesdays and Saturdays, I believe, and they also come on Sundays, so that's when you need to farm them. As for the mob material she needs the sword guards from the basically the samurais. They're pretty easy to farm. You probably have been farming them for Ayaka, so the same material she needs them for Baal. And as for Ascension past level 6, level 7 to level 10, she needs again the flower drop by La Senora, who is going to be a weekly boss, basically the Crimson Witch of Flames for next patch, so that's going to be that. And for level 10, of course, you need the Crown of Sagehood. Moving very quickly over her passive talents, I've already talked about this already. Passive talent 1, when she gets this, I believe at level 20. When nearby party members pick up energy particles, she can gain 2 stacks of that stack. Can trigger once every 3 seconds. So again, for entire cycle, 8 stacks from this is probably what we're looking at, so 4 times. The second one is that, which unlocks at level 70, I believe. This could be wrong, and is because any energy recharge that goes over 100%, for example 275% energy recharge, we're looking at 175% that goes into the calculation here. For every 1% of energy recharge over 100%, Raiden Shogun gains the 2 following buffs. The first one is during her Q state, she increases energy recharge by 0.6%. Now this is not exactly energy recharge, this is energy she can recover. So this does not go further into the energy recharge calculation. This is only considered energy particle she can recover. And the second one is happening at all times. For every 1% of energy recharge that goes over 100%, she gains 0.4% electro damage bonus. This is very nice for her. It basically allows you to use attack percent goblet. And for the final one, useful one, she is, when crafting single hand swords and pole-arm weapons, she can, when upgrading them, she can reduce the moral cost by 50%. Basically saving you some free resins on some days, so you don't have to farm more res. This is very nice. And finally, for the final one, she can all contribute to cooking. I'm sure you have seen enough memes online for this already, where Baal cannot cook. And finally, very quickly going over her artifacts. For artifacts, you want attack percent, you want energy recharge stance because she scales off energy recharge, but you want attack percent goblet. I know some people are asking why not electro percent damage goblet. The reason is because saturation. Once any specific rate goes over the rest by a lot, the damage will become less, because the way the damage calculated is by multiplying 8 different multipliers together. So it is best to keep the multipliers as close to each other in terms of numbers as possible. And of course, this is impossible to do that. However, what we can do is between crit, attack, and elemental damage bonus, we'll try to keep these 3 as close together as possible in terms of numbers. And of course, for crit, you should go higher because that's its own thing. But for attack percent, elemental damage bonus, when elemental damage bonus goes too high, the other situation being child, you should move some of it to attack to try to avoid saturation. So this is why she might be better with attack percent goblets and electro damage bonus. So this is probably one of the longest videos I've done in a while. Thank you very much if you have watched through the whole thing. If you can subscribe, it would be much appreciated. The amount of time I took into this video is a little bit more than I would like to admit. And on top of that, if you can leave a comment, it would be much appreciated. If you can leave a like, I would appreciate as well. Thank you very much for watching and have a nice day.